about our creative learning touring program and expressions of interest for our 2025 touring program. My name is Pippin. I'm the Senior Manager of our creative learning team here at Regional Arts Victoria. And today we've also got Nova Winneray, who's our creative learning coordinator. She'll be monitoring the chat. If anyone's got any questions, you can pop them in the chat throughout the session, and we'll have time for questions at the end also. And we've also got Claire Miovit here, who is our communications and development coordinator, who is going to share some of her marketing and communications tips. So you probably just heard a little warning that we are recording this session. You are welcome to have your camera on or off throughout the session. Whatever you feel more comfortable with is fine. And please feel free to raise your hand if you've got a question anytime, or pop it in the chat. But while you're not speaking, it would be great to keep muted just in case you've got any background noise happening as well. Also, just quickly, myself and most likely other RAV staff as well may have a bit of cross-looking going on, because I've got a double screen here, so I've got some notes that I'm probably looking at as well. So if it looks like I'm not looking at you, I am here and I am paying attention. Just got a couple of screens going on. So before we kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I am joining in from today. I'm on Wurundjeri country, Kulin Nation in Fitzroy. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and also to extend that respect to Aboriginal and First Nations people from other countries, from wherever anyone is coming in from today. So just a quick little run through of what we'll chat about today. I thought I'd just give a little bit of background about the touring program, and about what it's like working with RAV, and the types of work that we are able to include in the program, what we'd like to include in the program. And then I'll talk a little bit through our guidelines and our application process as well. And we'll have a bit of time to talk about marketing materials and support material, and then also to answer any of your questions as well. So you, I imagine, would have most likely all had a look through the guideline document and our drafting tool document, which are both available on the website. If you haven't had a chance yet to have a look at those, you can download them anytime from the website and get a bit more information about the program. And you can see all the questions that are on the actual application form, so you can do a draft version to tweak until you're ready to pop your actual expression of interest in. But it does give you a bit of background about the program. So the program is an incursion-based program, which means we visit schools across the state. It is open to both regional schools and metro schools in Melbourne as well. However, of course, we do focus on reaching those more regional and remote schools, but we are open to everyone, and that's also both government and independent and private schools as well. As part of the touring program, Regional Arts Victoria will advertise and promote your program, or programs that are part of the program. I'll say the word program many times in the next 45 minutes. And what that means is we'll look after all your tour coordination things, services, as well as looking after any kind of booking, logistics, invoicing, contracting with schools or presenters, as we call them. So as well as being open to schools, as I mentioned, we also promote our programs and sometimes send programs to other types of venues, like small community halls, or sometimes libraries or festivals or things like that as well. So it's not exclusive school bookings. However, they're mostly school audiences. What else? We do have a subsidy program that's available for schools. So as part of this program for artists, you would be paid a artist fee for either presenting your program on a weekly basis or on a one-off basis. And as the artist or the company, you decide what that fee is. When you're doing your application, you can give us that information. But all the programs are fee-paying programs for schools. So we've got a baseline of what we charge for schools, which is roughly on average $10 a head. Of course, that very rarely is the same as what your artist fee might be, and that's fine. That's where we rely on our funding and also our subsidy programs. So schools that are either in regional or remote locations or are disadvantaged from other circumstances, or maybe have been affected by natural disasters in recent years. There's a whole bunch of different criteria that we use to determine this, but most schools that are disadvantaged in some way can have access to a subsidised fee for your programs. So we hope that makes it a bit more accessible for different types of schools as well. As an artist, you really just need to think about your weekly or per show or per program fee, and all that kind of front end booking fees and things like that is really for us to deal with and worry about. But just to give you a bit of background, for the 2025 program, we are seeking only a small number of works, probably 3 to 5, and the program's really targeted at primary and secondary aged students. So occasionally we might have something included in the program that is suitable for early years or preschool ages as well, but our real focus is the primary and secondary year levels at this point. So we are specifically looking for works that are either focused for primary years or primary and secondary, rather than secondary alone. And that's because we visit a lot of smaller regional P to 12 schools where we might have both primary and secondary groups in the one audience or in the one workshop group. As you're going through your application, one of the questions you'll answer is what year level your work is appropriate for. So it's great to think about that. And also, if your work is appropriate for a wide range of year levels, it's great to think about and be able to describe what the difference in those two offerings might be. So that's more likely in a workshop scenario. If you're offering a workshop and you say it might be appropriate for primary or secondary year levels, giving the assessors, the people who are reading your application, a little bit of information so they can picture in their head how it could be different for a year 2 student compared to a year 8 student is really helpful for people who are reading your application as well. And then also that would also be really helpful in your marketing materials as well. You will be asked in your application form about whether you'd like to be applying for our on the road or on call program. That's referring to the ways we sort of section off the different areas of the program. And on the road is where we might contract you or your company for 2 to 3 weeks, and within that time, we will build a tour itinerary for that time. So usually that means we would send you off from Monday to Friday, and you would return home for the weekend, and then go and do that again for a second and possibly third week throughout the year. So if you're thinking that might be what you want to apply for, you would need to think about having your team available for that amount of time, either in term 2 or term 3, and that's a time window that we would negotiate with you if you're successful in the program, so you don't need to know those dates at this point. And the other part of the program is on call, or it's kind of like on demand, I guess. It means that your program is advertised and presented as part of the program all across the year, and you as an artist or a company might, you might flag, oh, we're not available in term 1. We'll know that from the start. That's fine. We would advertise this program's available from term 2 to 4 as an example. And it means then that schools or presenters can come to us with some dates that would work for them. And then we would liaise with yourself or your team to figure out dates that suit. So that scenario, being part of that part of the program, would mean more likely a handful of, or one-off bookings across the year, rather than a 2 to 3 week window that we would set, quite far away in advance as well. So you can also just say, I'm applying to be part of both or either of those parts of the program. That's fine as well. We also ask in the application form to provide some information about your fees, and it's great to think about if you're applying for the on the road part of the program, which, as I mentioned, that's a 2 to 3 week window. That's where we ask you for a weekly fee. So when you think about whatever that is for you or your team, that needs to include all of you. It doesn't include any per diems. Regional Arts Victoria pays you per diems, also pays for your vehicle hire, fuel and accommodation for that time. Or if it's the on-call part of the program, any vehicle hire or accommodation that's required as the bookings come up. So the artist fee is really just that. So you don't need to think of it including any other extras. We suggest looking at the Live Performance Award as a guide to think about what your fees might be, but it's really up to you to tell us that, because obviously that can vary depending on the type of work you're doing and the number of people involved. We, of course, are working with our own budget limitations, so we're also sort of suggesting a per person suggestion of what seems to work well to balance out with other things in the wider program in terms of the budget that we have. But that really is just a suggestion. At the end of the day, you tell us what your fees are and we try and work with that. It's great to put as much info as you can in about that. If you are looking at the on-call part of the program, or you have a number of different types of offerings. So one of the questions in the application form you'll see is, do you have an additional offering? And so if you don't have an additional offering, that's absolutely fine. It's not a prerequisite. But if you do, it's great to put some information in about that. And so that could be, say, for example, your main part of the application is a performance, but you can also take a workshop as a secondary offering, or you might be keen to run a professional development session for teachers before the program. Those are what we call additional offerings, and they are really great sort of add-on things that could be a great point of difference for your work, or something that just can really enhance the experience for the students and for teachers as well. We have found that programs that do have some kind of additional offering or have a combination of different types of presentation within what you're offering work really well. And so by that I mean either what I just said, you might say a show is our main thing, but we can also do a workshop, or a combination being it's a live performance but it has some audience participation, so there is a sort of workshop element. Those types of works seem to be ones that work really well with our audiences and our schools that engage with our programs. I think having that participatory aspect for students is a great way to really be able to extend their learning as part of, from what they can take on the program, and also for teachers who are often looking for ways to extend on the experience. So how can they get the most of their students seeing a show in terms of what they need to deliver for their own other parts of the curriculum in the classroom? If you have different components to what you can present, that could work really well. It's, as I said, it's not a prerequisite, but it is something to also think about when you're thinking about your fees and how you put your package or your option together. What else? We also ask you a bit of information about your technical requirements. So I guess in the scheme of the types of venues that we tour to, as I said before, we do a lot of smaller, more remote schools. So work that's really flexible or adaptable in terms of how it can be presented also works really well. So of course, we sometimes visit schools that are really well equipped with great sort of actual theatre venues in their grounds or as part of their schools. That would be a really nice a day for a show. But then the next day you might be, say, in a basketball court or a multi-purpose room. So something that is quite adaptable works really well because there is such a huge scale of variety in terms of types of venues. As I said earlier, we also do some community hall type venues sometimes. So that might be a space that has a small stage, but they may not have any other sort of technical support, any lighting or things like that. And often schools don't have that type of setup either. So we look for work that is quite low production value, I guess, or you come with what you need. So if you do need some lights or a great sound system, you have that as part of your gear. So giving us all that information is really handy in your application. So we know what schools would need to expect or what they'd be required to provide. It's okay to ask schools to have some of their own gear, but it's great for us and other people who are reading your application to get an idea of that, because different schools do have different setups as well. So that's important. And then also things like the types of spaces that you might not feel like the work's appropriate for is really handy as well. So for instance, you might say, we're happy to do this show on a small stage or in a multi-purpose room, but we just can't do it outside on the asphalt. That kind of information is really handy as well. Or we need the windows to be blacked out because it's a shadow puppetry show, or whatever the case might be. That kind of information is really essential. But generally, those low production value works are what works best, because really also at the end of the day, it's got to be manageable for you and your team as well. And you probably saw in the guidelines that we can only really take works with a touring party of maximum of 3 people. And that's partly to do with our own budget limitations and, I guess what we can take on the road. We would usually be hiring you, I guess, a 3-seater van, assuming that you might have a bit of a setup to pack in the back, or say an SUV if you don't have much of a setup, with an expectation that you and your team will be able to kind of bump everything in, do the show or workshop, and bump everything out, pack everything up, and probably drive to the next location in the one day. So pretty sort of snappy in terms of those time requirements. So something that has, say, a 1 to 1.5 hour bump in, I'd say will probably work quite well, or seems to work quite well in terms of scheduling and the way that we can build itineraries. Of course, you can't always be doing a thing at the same time every day, for different schools have different timetables. But really, if it's anything more than that, it means that the window that you are able to present in the school is a lot smaller. Say if you're like, our bump in's like 3 hours, that really means that you can only do your show after lunch. And it just makes it a little bit more limiting, I guess, for schools who are often can't be that flexible with their timetables. So that's something to think about as well. Obviously, being on the road, you or someone in your team needs to have a license and be comfortable driving the van or the vehicle that's required. In terms of the types of work that work well in the program, in terms of art form, it does seem to be quite performing arts focused generally, what is presented through the program. And that works really well. And I guess that's a result of the types of companies and artists that are applying as well. We're definitely not exclusive to performing arts. We really try and encourage artists and companies specialising in different disciplines to apply, and we do try and have a variety of different art forms within what we can present as well. It just so happens that I guess it does end up being probably more than half, and we do have a lot of our schools that are really interested in those types of experiences, like whether it's a live theatre or puppetry or music, circus, physical theatre, that type of live performance art as well. But again, we do try and make it really keep some kind of variety and diversity within both the art forms and the types of works that are being presented. I guess on that, if you're working with any kind of First Nations content, it's really important, I would strongly suggest, to make sure that you've done your research there and consulted with any appropriate Aboriginal land corporations in your area, or even talking to someone at VAI, which is the Victorian Aboriginal Education Association, to get some advice on the best way to approach that with your work. We have both an internal assessment panel here at Regional Arts Victoria, and then shortlisted works will be taken to an external panel, which often involve other teachers from regional schools, people from the Victorian Curriculum and Assessment Authority, Department of Education, and other, I guess, sort of industry voices as well and perspectives, and definitely any First Nations content that's being explored throughout the program. That is something that is really essential for anyone that's assessing any of the applications for that to be eligible. Okay, I've just banged on for a long time there. Has anyone got any questions so far?
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So I was just wondering, with the idea of add-on things, so we've got a workshop we've been presenting, and that's a great little thing on its own, but we're developing some add-on things, which are a little bit dependent on funding, but they would hopefully be ready for like this time next year. So is it worth mentioning that, or only if they're kind of absolutely ready to go elements?
No, I'd say it's worth mentioning it if it would be ready. I guess more generally with work that you're applying for, we do, as you've probably read, we do expect things to be tour ready, to be ready to go, and that's largely because we don't really have the budget to cover any remount or rehearsal development costs. But if it's something like what you've described that's an add-on and that will most likely be ready, I'd say definitely worth mentioning. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
We might move on to talking about any marketing and support material. Claire, I'll hand over for you for a moment.
Oh, thanks, Pipin. Hi, I'm Claire. Pipin introduced me earlier. I'm the Communications and Development Coordinator at RAV. And I'd just like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people coming from Ballarat today. So, yeah, acknowledge the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. So, yeah, I'm just going to go quickly through the marketing that you'll need to provide for with your application. So I'm just sort of going to outline a few sort of handy things. There is really great guidelines. Obviously, you've probably all looked at this, and a drafting document that's really super helpful to help with your application. So this is all sort of on there as well. But yeah, I just wanted to go through a bit. And if anyone's got any questions, you can ask me at afterwards. But obviously, the description of your project is one of the most important things for the application. We'll use that copy to sell your project to the schools and educators across Victoria. So, yeah, the explanation of your project is obviously very important. I've just kind of got a few little tips, I guess, for creating that description. The first one being keep it simple. Copy is, you know, we're reading copy all the time in every part of our lives. So you can be bombarded by it. So using clear, simple language, trying not to waffle or repeating yourself is the best thing. It just needs to cut through. You guys are obviously going to be able to explain your projects the best, but yeah, just try to keep it simple for these applications. That's great. Obviously also make sure to include how you think it will connect with students and how you think it will benefit with the school's curriculum, obviously is important. Outline how your project will run by including timelines and include specific contact points with students that will help education envisage what your project will be like in their classrooms. Also, never assume the audience knows anything, so explain as clearly as you can. Obviously, watch your spelling and grammar. So my best tips with that is to get someone to reread it after you've written it yourself, because the more you look at something, probably the less likely you're going to catch something. If someone else reads it, they'll probably see something that you haven't been able to see. And ensure your description leaves a clear impression of what the reader can expect to see and hear and feel about your project. So as part of the copy, you need to create a tagline. So a tagline is a short and memorable description that will have a lasting effect on the reader. So that's the first thing that they'll see without going into any other copy about your project. So, you know, it's hard sometimes to think about short, snappy sentence, but also very important. We'll also need a short show synopsis. So that's 150 to max 250 words. So this synopsis should be short and snappy and to the point. So describe what the project is, what the students and teachers can expect from the project, and why it is ideal for schools. And remember to think about who you're pitching to, so obviously schools and educators. And then we'll also need a long show synopsis as well, so that's 300 to 500 words. And so this can be an expanded version of the short show synopsis. So consider expanding on why and how it was made, what's it about, and what themes or areas of the creative practice does the project explore with students, and how does it aim to impact the student learning. So that's kind of the point about the copy. Obviously, if you've got any questions, please ask. I'll move over to images, because images are obviously extremely important. Images speak 1,000 words. So what we require for these applications is dynamic images. So they're the strongest tools available for any kind of promotion. With images, try and think outside the box too. Include behind the scenes photos or design sketches. Presenters are always loving audiences to understand the creative process as well as seeing the final work, so they can help personalise your work. So all the images will need high res, so 300 dpi. Just make sure to include all the image credits as well, because it's something that, you know, handy to have with the application. I think that landscape images work best for website content, but I also think that provide portrait sizes if you have them as well, because they can work really well for social media. And obviously video, this application process, you'll need to provide high quality video materials as part of the application process. So if you don't have video, it's time to start to make some. So we think a 30 to 60 second promo video is the best way to present this, but you can also provide a longer 1 to 4 minute show reel as well. There, on that drafting document I mentioned before, there are some links to other good examples of videos, so it's handy to have a look at that. There's also, you can have a look at the marketing copy and the images and video from this current season's shows on our website as well. So that's all in the schools section of our website. So that's probably quite handy for you to have a look at for submitting your application. And yeah, you'll need to provide all of your application materials via a sharing platform such as Dropbox or Google Drive, which I'm sure you've probably all used before, but we need you to create a new folder for that and clearly label it with your show title and producer and artist name. That's kind of all of the notes I've got, but obviously very open to answering any specific questions that anyone might have about their marketing their project.
Thanks, Claire.
No problem.
Does anyone have any marketing questions?
I do have a question again. It's quite specific about our project. I don't know if this is the best place to ask it or in a meeting with you tomorrow, Pippin, to talk about it. But it is a marketing question. So
that's fine. Ask away. I mean,
yeah.
It may, help someone else with their project as well.
Okay. So yeah. Our project, I suppose, is a bit different because it's not performance based. So my question is about the video. Because we're not performance based, we're actually authors who make children's books, and our workshop is about our process. So we make stories, visual storytellers making stories with photographs of miniatures. So we involve the kids in doing photographs of miniatures, talking to them about our process for storytelling in miniature. But yeah, it's not so much a performance visually based thing. We do have some photographs and things of working in schools, but there's always a thing of you're not supposed to show images of school children without having specific permission from them to show those images. So I'm just wondering about would it be okay to make a video that was a mixture of stills and us talking about what we do rather than footage of us delivering our workshop, which is, so it's more about stills than it is about action, if you like. So
yeah, sure. I mean, that's my understanding, and this is the first time I've worked on this program too. So I just started at RAV at the start of this year, but my understanding is that that's what part of the video would be, is you talking about your project and the processes that you take. Is that correct, Pippin? Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that something like that for your project would be great, to sort of show the process of you creating that. I know that that's difficult if you haven't got those permissions with the students that you've already worked with, but yes, you talking about it and including the stills in that, to sort of back it up like that, that's great. I think that would work really well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, the expressions of interest, this is stage 1 of our expressions of interest process. We have these open for another 3 weeks until Monday morning on the 27th of May. And then after that, there'll be a stage 2 process, which applicants who are invited to participate in stage 2 will be notified the following Wednesday, the 5th, I think, of June. And in that stage 2, we'll ask applicants during that stage to provide a bit more information about the educational focus of their work, with audiences and participants with this program being mostly schools. We have quite a strong focus on aligning work with the Victorian curriculum. So as an artist, we expect you or your team to have a bit of an understanding of that in relation to your own work. Obviously, that's quite, there's quite a lot of sort of information that we ask for, and that can be involved in thinking about that. So, at this stage of the application process, there's one question in there about the educational focus of your work, but that's it. But so we don't really want you to have to spend that much time on that if it's not really your area of expertise at this stage, which is fine. But in stage 2, there'll be a couple of weeks to complete a secondary part of the process, which will be a couple more questions where we do ask you to look a bit closer at the actual curriculum, and we'll provide you information of where you can find all those details, and how you can sort of read it and dissect bits of information, and then talk to us a bit about how you think your work relates to different areas of the curriculum. So from there, stage 2 applicants will be assessed by an external consultation panel, as I mentioned before, and that will happen towards the end of June. We will notify all of our stage 2 applicants by mid-July, and then the program will be launched and open to the public at the end of August. So it's a bit of a tight turnaround in terms of, it doesn't seem like that because it's a long way away, but in terms of the information that we would require from you or your company, particularly with marketing materials, if you are invited to be part of the program, there's not a huge amount of time to get any additional marketing materials in. So that's why we do ask you for quite a lot of that content at this stage of the process. But anyone that is invited to come along to the second part of the process, focusing more on the educational focus, we will run another one of these sessions over that time as well, when those applications are open, and will be available for any chats or answering any questions about that as well, for anyone that would like some support. You can probably see on the website that you can book in a time to have a phone chat if you wanted to have a a chat about your application in more depth over the next few weeks, please book in a time, or just flick me, if none of the times suit you, just flick me an email, and I'm sure we can find a suitable time to have a chat and talk a bit more about your program. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. I think that's, I feel like we've probably covered everything. Or Nova, do you think there's anything important that we missed or that I missed talking about?
No, Pippin, I think it was really comprehensive. But yeah, we're obviously, as Pippin advised, here to support you with any questions that you do have. So just shout out, book that for an appointment. I'll pop a link in the chat now, or you can contact either Pippin directly or myself. I'll put my email in there too. Best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Lovely to see your faces, and we hope we see your applications as part of this process. Thank you. Have a great day.